The First Steps, Part 2 of the first of 7 beginners classes, delivered at 228 West 39th Street, New York, on the evening of 14th December 1895, and recorded by Mr. Josiah J Goodwin. Raja Yoga is divided into 8 steps. The first is Yama, non-killing, truthfulness, non-stealing, continence, and non-receiving of any gifts. Next is Niyama, cleanliness, contentment, austerity, study, and self-surrender to God. Then comes Asana, or posture, pranayama, or control of prana, pratyahara, or restraint of the senses from their objects, dharana, or fixing the mind on a spot, dhyana, or meditation, and samadhi, or superconsciousness. Yama and Niyama, as we see, are moral trainings. Without these as the basis, no practice of yoga will succeed. As these two become established, the yogin will begin to realize the fruits of his practice. Without these, it will never bear fruit. A yogin must not think of injuring anyone by thought, word, or deed. Mercy shall not be for men alone, but shall go beyond and embrace the whole world. The next step is asana, posture. A series of exercises, physical and mental, is to be gone through every day until certain higher states are reached. Therefore, it is quite necessary that we should find a posture in which we can remain long. That posture which is the easiest for one should be the one chosen. For thinking, a certain posture may be very easy for one man, while to another it may be very difficult. We will find later on that during the study of these psychological matters, a good deal of activity goes on in the body. Nerve currents will have to be displaced and given a new channel. New sorts of vibrations will begin. The whole constitution will be remodeled, as it were. But the main part of the activity will lie along the spinal column, so that the one thing necessary for the posture is to hold the spinal column free, sitting erect, holding the 3 parts, the chest, neck, and head, in a straight line. Let the whole weight of the body be supported by the ribs. And then you have an easy, natural posture with the spine straight. You will easily see that you cannot think very high thoughts with the chest in. This portion of the yoga is a little similar to the Hatha yoga, which deals entirely with the physical body. Its aim being to make the physical body very strong. We have nothing to do with it here, because its practices are very difficult and cannot be learned in a day, and after all, do not lead to much spiritual growth. Many of these practices you will find in Delsart and other teachers, such as placing the body in different postures. But the object in these is physical, not psychological. There is not one muscle in the body over which a man cannot establish a perfect control. The heart can be made to stop or go on at his bidding, and each part of the organism can be similarly controlled. The result of this branch of yoga is to make men live long. Health is the chief idea, the one goal of the Hatha yogin. He is determined not to fall sick, and he never does. He lives long. 100 years is nothing to him. He is quite young and fresh when he is 150, without one hair turned grey. But That is all. A banyan tree lives sometimes 5,000 years, but it is a banyan tree and nothing more. So, if a man lives long, he is only a healthy animal. One or two ordinary lessons of the Hatha Yogins are very useful. For instance, some of you will find it a good thing for headaches to drink cold water through the nose as soon as you get up in the morning. The whole day your brain will be nice and cool, and you will never catch cold. It is very easy to do. Put your nose into the water and draw it up through the nostrils, making a pump action in the throat. After one has learned to have a firm, erect seat, one has to perform, according to certain schools, a practice called the purifying of the nerves. This part has been rejected by some as not belonging to Raja Yoga. But as so great an authority as the commentator Shankaracharya advises it, I think it fit that it should be mentioned. I will quote his own directions from his commentary on the Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The mind whose dross has been cleared away by pranayama becomes fixed in Brahman. Therefore, pranayama is declared. First, the nerves are to be purified. Then comes the power to practice pranayama. Stopping the right nostril with the thumb, through the left nostril fill in air according to capacity. Then, without any interval, throw the air out through the right nostril, closing the left one. Again, inhaling through the right nostril, eject through the left according to capacity. Practicing this 3 or 5 times at 4 hours of the day, before dawn, during midday, in the evening, and at midnight, in 15 days or a month, purity of the nerves is attained. Then begins pranayama. Practice is absolutely necessary. You may sit down and listen to me by the hour every day, but if you do not practice, you will not get one step further. It all depends on practice. We never understand these things until we experience them. We will have to see and feel them for ourselves. Simply listening to explanations and theories will not do. There are several obstructions to practice. The first obstruction is an unhealthy body. If the body is not in a fit state, the practice will be obstructed. Therefore, we have to keep the body in good health. We have to take care of what we eat and drink and what we do. Always use a mental effort, what is usually called Christian Science, to keep the body strong. That is all, nothing further of the body. We must not forget that health is only a means to an end. If health were the end, we would be like animals. Animals rarely become unhealthy. The second obstruction is doubt. We always feel doubtful about things we do not see. Man cannot live upon words, however he may try. So doubt comes to us as to whether there is any truth in these things or not. Even the best of us will doubt sometimes. With practice, within a few days, a little glimpse will come, enough to give one encouragement and hope. As a certain commentator on yoga philosophy says, when one proof is obtained, however little that may be, it will give us faith in the whole teaching of yoga. For instance, after the first few months of practice, you will begin to find you can read another's thoughts. They will come to you in picture form. Perhaps you will hear something happening at a long distance when you concentrate your mind with a wish to hear. These glimpses will come by little bits at first, but enough to give you faith and strength and hope. For instance, if you concentrate your thoughts on the tip of your nose, in a few days, you will begin to smell the most beautiful fragrance, which will be enough to show you that there are certain mental perceptions that can be made obvious without the contact of physical objects. But we must always remember that these are only the means. The aim, the end, the goal of all this training is liberation of the soul. Absolute control of nature, and nothing short of it must be the goal. We must be the masters and not the slaves of nature. Neither body nor mind must be our master, nor must we forget that the body is mine and not I the body's. A god and a demon went to learn about the self from a great sage. They studied with him for a long time. At last, the sage told them, "You yourselves are the being you are seeking." Both of them thought that their bodies were the self. They went back to their people quite satisfied and said, "We have learned everything that was to be learned. Eat, drink, and be merry. We are the self. There is nothing beyond us." The nature of the demon was ignorant, clouded. So he never inquired any further, but was perfectly contented with the idea that he was God, that by the self was meant the body. The God had a purer nature. He at first committed the mistake of thinking, "I, this body, am Brahman. So keep it strong and in health and well dressed, and give it all sorts of enjoyments." But in a few days, he found out that that could not be the meaning of the sage, their master. There must be something higher. So he came back and said, "Sir, did you teach me that this body was the self? If so, I see all bodies die. The self cannot die." The sage said, "Find it out. Thou art that." Then the god thought that the vital forces which work the body were what the sage meant. But after a time he found that if he ate, these vital forces remained strong, but if he starved, they became weak. The god then went back to the sage and said, "Sir, do you mean that the vital forces are the self?" The sage said, "Find out for yourself. Thou art that." The god returned home once more, thinking it was the mind perhaps that was the self. But in a short while, he saw that thoughts were so various, now good, again bad. The mind was too changeable to be the self. He went back to the sage and said, "Sir, I do not think that the mind is the self. Did you mean that?" "No," replied the sage. "Thou art that. Find out for yourself." The god went home and at last found that he was the self, beyond all thought, one, without birth or death, whom the sword cannot pierce or the fire burn, whom the air cannot dry or the water wet, the beginningless and endless, the immovable, the intangible, the omniscient, the omnipotent being, that it was neither the body nor the mind, but beyond them all. So he was satisfied. But the poor demon did not get the truth owing to his fondness for the body. This world has a good many of these demonic natures. But there are some gods too. If one proposes to teach any science to increase the power of sense enjoyment, one finds multitudes ready for it. If one undertakes to show the supreme goal, one finds few to listen to him. Very few have the power to grasp the highest. Fewer still the patience to attain to it. But there are a few also who know that even if the body can be made to live for 1,000 years, the result in the end will be the same. When the forces that hold it together go away, the body must fall. No man was ever born who could stop his body one moment from changing. Body is the name of a series of changes. As in a river, the masses of water are changing before you every moment, and new masses are coming. Yet, taking similar form, so is it with this body. Yet the body must be kept strong and healthy. It is the best instrument we have. This human body is the greatest body in the universe, and a human being, the greatest being. Man is higher than all animals, than all angels. None is greater. Even the devas, minor gods, will have to come down again and attain to salvation through a human body. Man alone attains to perfection, not even the devas. According to the Jews and Mohammedans, God created man after creating the angels and everything else. And after creating man, he asked the angels to come and salute him. And all did so except Iblis. So God cursed him and he became Satan. Behind this allegory is the great truth that this human birth is the greatest birth we can have. The lower creation, the animal, is dull and manufactured mostly out of tamas. Animals cannot have any high thoughts, nor can the angels or devas attain to direct freedom without human birth. In human society, in the same way, too much wealth or too much poverty is a great impediment to the higher development of the soul. It is from the middle classes that the great ones of the world come. Here, the forces are very equally adjusted and balanced. Returning to our subject, we come next to pranayama, controlling the breathing. What has that to do with concentrating the powers of the mind? Breath is like the flywheel of this machine, the body. In a big engine, you find the flywheel first moving, and that motion is conveyed to finer and finer machinery until the most delicate and finest mechanism in the machine is in motion. The breath is that flywheel, supplying and regulating the motive power to everything in this body. There was once a minister to a great king. He fell into disgrace. The king, as a punishment, ordered him to be shut up in the top of a very high tower. This was done, and the minister was left there to perish. He had a faithful wife, however, who came to the tower at night and called to her husband to know what she could do to help him. He told her to return to the tower the following night and bring with her a long rope, some stout twine, packed thread, silken thread, a beetle, and a little honey. Wondering much, the good wife obeyed her husband and brought him the desired articles. The husband directed her to attach the silken thread firmly to the beetle, then to smear its horns with a drop of honey, and to set it free on the wall of the tower with its head pointing upwards. She obeyed all these instructions, and the beetle started on its long journey. Smelling the honey ahead, it slowly crept onwards, in the hope of reaching the honey, until at last it reached to the top of the tower, when the minister grasped the beetle and got possession of the silken thread. He told his wife to tie the other end to the pack thread, and after he had drawn up the pack thread, he repeated the process with the stout twine, and lastly with the rope. Then the rest was easy. The minister descended from the tower by means of the rope and made his escape. In this body of ours, the breath motion is the silken thread. By laying hold of and learning to control it, we grasp the packed thread of the nerve currents, and from these, the stout twine of our thoughts, and lastly, the rope of prana, controlling which we reach freedom. We do not know anything about our own bodies. We cannot know. At best, we can take a dead body and cut it in pieces. And there are some who can take a live animal and cut it in pieces in order to see what is inside the body. Still, that has nothing to do with our own bodies. We know very little about them. Why not? Because our attention is not discriminating enough to catch the very fine movements that are going on within. We can know of them only when the mind becomes more subtle and enters, as it were, deeper into the body. To get the subtle perception, we have to begin with the grosser perceptions. We have to get hold of that which is setting the whole engine in motion. That is the prana, the most obvious manifestation of which is the breath. Then, along with the breath, we shall slowly enter the body, which will enable us to find out about the subtle forces, the nerve currents that are moving all over the body. As soon as we perceive and learn to feel them, we shall begin to get control over them and over the body. The mind is also set in motion by these different nerve currents. So at last, we shall reach the state of perfect control over the body and the mind, making both our servants. Knowledge is power. We have to get this power. So we must begin at the beginning with pranayama, restraining the prana. This pranayama is a long subject, and it will take several lessons to illustrate it thoroughly. We shall take it part by part. We shall gradually see the reasons for each exercise and what forces in the body are set in motion. All these things will come to us, but it requires constant practice, and the proof will come by practice. No amount of reasoning which I can give you will be proof to you until you have demonstrated it for yourselves. As soon as you begin to feel these currents in motion all over you, doubts will vanish. But it requires hard practice every day. You must practice at least twice every day, and the best times are towards the morning and the evening. When night passes into day and day into night, a state of relative calmness ensues. The early morning and the early evening are the two periods of calmness. Your body will have a like tendency to become calm at those times. We should take advantage of that natural condition and begin then to practice. Make it a rule not to eat until you have practiced. If you do this, the sheer force of hunger will break your laziness. In India, they teach children never to eat until they have practiced or worshipped, and it becomes natural to them after a time. A boy will not feel hungry until he has bathed and practiced. Those of you who can afford it will do better to have a room for this practice alone. Do not sleep in that room. It must be kept holy. You must not enter the room until you have bathed and are perfectly clean in body and mind. Keep flowers in that room. They are the best surroundings for a yogin. Also, pictures that are pleasing. Burn incense morning and evening. Have no quarreling or anger or unholy thought in that room. Only allow those persons to enter it who are of the same thought as you. Then gradually there will be an atmosphere of holiness in the room. So that when you are miserable, sorrowful, doubtful, or your mind is disturbed, the very fact of entering that room will make you calm. This was the idea of the temple and the church. And in some temples and churches, you will find it even now. But in the majority of them, the very idea has been lost. The idea is that by keeping holy vibrations there, the place becomes and remains illumined. Those who cannot afford to have a room set apart can practice anywhere they like. Sit in a straight posture, and the first thing to do is to send a current of holy thought to all creation. Mentally repeat, let all beings be happy. Let all beings be peaceful. Let all beings be blissful. So to the east, south, north, and west. The more you do that, the better you will feel yourself. You will find at last that the easiest way to make ourselves healthy is to see that others are healthy. And the easiest way to make ourselves happy is to see that others are happy. After doing that, those who believe in God should pray. Not for money, not for health, not for heaven. Pray for knowledge and light. Every other prayer is selfish. Then the next thing to do is to think of your own body and see that it is strong and healthy. It is the best instrument you have. Think of it as being strong as adamant, that with the help of this body, you will cross the ocean of life. Freedom is never to be reached by the weak. Throw away all weakness. Tell your body that it is strong. Tell your mind that it is strong. And have unbounded faith and hope in yourself.
If you have enjoyed listening to these podcasts from Vedanta Works, please consider making a donation to our Vedanta Works podcast project GoFundMe campaign. Just open GoFundMe.com on your browser and search for Vedanta Works Podcast Project. All funds will be used to cover the cost of narration, editing, social media marketing, and podcast distribution. Thank you for your continued support.